Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome back. I'm Fuzz, and today I've got another sequel video. This is a sequel to a video I did last year on some of my biggest blind buy regrets, which, as the title suggests, are movies that I purchased without ever having seen, but I now regret having added those movies to my collection. And if I had to do it over again, I probably would be making a different choice. Now, keep in mind when I say blind buy regrets, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad movie, right? Although many of my blind buy regrets do end up being movies that, that I consider bad, or at least they just didn't resonate with me. But they don't necessarily even have to be bad movies. They can be really good movies that, for whatever reason, I just know that I'm never going to watch again, right? Like, take, for example, a movie like Oppenheimer. Right, which is an excellent movie. It's very well done. I've watched it once, right? And I know that's a movie that I'm probably never going to watch again, even though I respect the hell out of the movie and I think it's really well done. But just due to the subject matter of the movie, it's not really the kind of film I could see myself ever really wanting to rewatch. But again, I thought it was a well done movie, and I really respect what Christopher Nolan accomplished with it. Now, in that case, I do own Oppenheimer, and I don't regret picking it up because my son is a big fan of that movie, and he does like to rewatch it quite often. But it's just not really the kind of movie that has a high rewatch value for me personally. So I guess the point I'm making about that is that blind buy regrets can come in many different shapes and sizes and forms, right? They're not all just bad movies. Sometimes they're actually fairly decent movies that, for whatever reason, I just know that I personally wouldn't feel too inclined to revisit and didn't necessarily need to add to my collection. So in the spirit of that first video, today I have 10 more blind buy regrets for you. And keep in mind, these are not in any particular order. I think last time I actually did rank them in order of my degree of regret, right? But not this time. This time it's once again just a random smattering of blind buy regrets, titles that I personally regret adding to my collection. So without any further ado, let's rock. All right, so first up here, we've got a movie from 1981. This is a Severin Films release, and I'm talking about Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker. I had picked up the 4K, and I did not buy this directly from Severin. I just picked up the standard edition from Amazon. And, you know, this is one that I had on my list to check out for a while. I'd been thinking about picking it up for at least a year or two prior to picking it up. And, you know, I think I had heard some other people talk about it in other videos in the horror communities and whatnot, and said it was a pretty twisted movie. And so I thought I'd give it a try. But part of the reason I was interested in it is just because I like watching horror movies on 4K for the first time, ones that I haven't seen, especially if it looks like something that I might like. Well, in this case, I didn't really care for this one. I mean, I guess the movie itself wasn't that bad, but the woman who plays the aunt in this movie, she was super cringe and super creepy. And I had a hard time getting past that, right? I just had a hard time stomaching her, to be honest. And when you can't stomach one of the actors or one of the characters, it's hard to get past that to enjoy the movie, right? And that's kind of what the case was here. But I just didn't think it was that great of a movie, to be honest. I was hoping it would be a little bit better than it is. And then when you add in the creepy aunt factor, yeah, just didn't do a whole lot for me. So this is one I definitely regret buying and would not have added to my collection if I had watched the movie first. So my bad. What are you going to do? Sometimes that happens, right? You like to be a little adventurous sometimes, but sometimes it backfires and it doesn't quite work out as well as you'd hoped. And this was one such case for me. So for my first blind buy regret, yeah, Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker. Next up, I've got a zombie movie here that I kind of regret adding to the collection from 2013, World War Z, which I believe has since received a 4K release, or it's going to be receiving one if it hasn't come out already. I wasn't really following the release date on the 4K because I didn't really care about this movie. So, you know, some of you know that I'm not the biggest Brad Pitt fan and that he's one of those actors who kind of bugs the shit out of me. So some of you may be asking, Fuzz, why would you buy this movie if you don't like Brad Pitt? Well, the answer is I used to be able to tolerate Brad Pitt more than I feel like I am now. right? Like he bugs me more now than he did even just a few years ago, right? And at the time when I first bought this, I was just I was looking for some zombie movies that I hadn't seen before, because I do like zombie movies. I love the Dawn of the Dead movies, Day of the Dead. Love the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead remake. So I love zombie movies, but I hadn't seen this one. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try. Yeah, it's got Brad Pitt in it, but I thought maybe I'd be able to tolerate it or whatever. And he was fine in this. He wasn't like horrible in this, but honestly, the movie was fairly forgettable. It just wasn't very intriguing to me, right? It didn't do much for me personally. So I don't know, maybe some of you dig this one, but it just didn't resonate with me personally. And I just don't know if I would ever really watch this one again. So if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't have purchased this, although I probably only got it for like $5 or $10 at the time. I don't seem to remember spending very much on this. I seem to remember it being on sale, and that was part of the reason I picked it up. So, but that was a few years back. So yeah, just not a big fan of World War Z. So that is my number 2. And moving on to my number 3, we have the 2014 remake of RoboCop. Now this is one I picked up. It came out, just last year on 4K, and it came out on the same day as RoboCop 2 was getting a 4K release, the sequel to the original RoboCop. And so I figured I definitely wanted RoboCop 2, and I knew I was going to review it for the channel. So I figured at the time I'd go ahead and pick this one up too, because I had never seen this remake. And I have to admit, I had this morbid curiosity to see how they handled the story and how the subject matter was handled. And, if I'm being honest, this wasn't terrible. I thought it was actually fairly decent and fairly entertaining for what it was. But I can't get the original RoboCop out of my head. And I just don't know if I'm ever really going to feel that inclined to return to this one. Now, it's possible I could maybe watch it, at least one other time in my life. That might happen. But I don't know that I really needed to add this to my collection, or I maybe could have just gotten the Blu-ray, which I didn't own. That was part of the reason I bought it on 4K for the first time, because I didn't already own the Blu-ray. So if I had owned the Blu-ray, if I had seen this film, I wouldn't have upgraded it to 4K. So, and the 4K looks decent. Like I said, it's an okay movie. It's mildly entertaining, but not the kind of movie I really feel this strong need to rewatch anytime in the foreseeable future. So yeah, I kind of regret picking this one up on 4K. I don't know that I would make that same choice again. So yeah, RoboCop 2014. Now, I think it's fair to say that no Blind Buy Regrets list would be complete without at least one Vinegar Syndrome title, because, blind buying from Vinegar Syndrome can be a pretty risky prospect, can't it? So I picked up this was just like about a year ago, this 1989 film, Red Surf. This has got George Clooney in it, another actor who is not an actor that I really care for that much. So I don't even know what I was thinking and why I bought this. This is a VSA, the Vinegar Syndrome VSA edition. So I like the packaging on these. You get the rigid hard box there, and as you can see, this is like a bottom-loading VHS style box. It's actually really cool packaging. You get the spot gloss there on the text, which you can kind of see there on both sides. So it's actually cool packaging. As you can see, I haven't even opened it yet. It's still sealed, just because I haven't had any interest in actually watching it. And, this is a title that I had on my Vinegar Syndrome checklist for like a year and a half, right? I think at one point I watched the trailer and thought, that might be all right. But I added it to my checklist at a time when I was feeling a lot more adventurous about blind buying from Vinegar Syndrome than I do now, right? There was a time a couple years ago when I first started the channel, I was all pumped up on Vinegar Syndrome. They had, not that long before I started the channel, they had released Roadhouse and Amityville Horror and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and Death Wish 2. So it seemed like they had a lot of cool titles coming out. And so I was all excited about Vinegar Syndrome and thinking, well, maybe I should explore some of these movies I've never heard of. Maybe they got some decent little gems in there. And so this is one of those titles that I just kind of added to my Vinegar Syndrome checklist because it looked like something that might be mildly interesting, right? And so I had been waiting for it to go on sale, and I waited like a year and a half for it to go on sale, and then it finally did, which was like last year, the beginning of last year, I think. And so I just kind of did a knee-jerk purchase on it. Oh yeah, that's been in my list for a while. I'll go ahead and get it. You know, it was a good price, so I picked it up. But I haven't watched it since I got it and have had no interest in watching it whatsoever. So I'm like, what the hell were you thinking, Fuzz? So the more I was thinking about it, I was like, you know what? Maybe it's time for another Blind Buy Regrets video, and I can add this title to it. And this is one of the titles that kind of inspired this sequel. So yeah, for my number 4, Red Surf. All right, next up for my number 5, we've got a movie here that I was actually pretty disappointed in. And that's because I actually had higher expectations for this particular film, this particular blind buy than I usually do. And that's because a number of people over the last few years had told me, hey, you should check this out. It's a good movie. It's a lot of fun, really good film, right? And I'd heard it from multiple people. I'd seen other people on the internet, talking this movie up. And so I ultimately ended up picking it up. And I'm talking about 1998's Run Lola Run. I got the Sony 4K here. And so when I found out Sony was releasing a 4K, I was like, yeah, I should pick this up because I have heard so many good things about this movie. And I just didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I didn't think it was a very good movie. And I didn't like the kind of redundant, repetitive nature of it because they tell like the same story like 3 different ways and with minor tweaks and stuff. And I just didn't care for the way it was laid out and what they were trying to do. It's a really kind of artsy kind of film, kind of out there artsy kind of. But, I don't know. I just didn't really like it. It's, I tried to, kind of sit on it and I was like, well, maybe. And I remember reviewing it at the time and I was like, it was pretty good. It was okay. I'm not sure. I'll have to kind of chew on it a little bit more. But the more I've had time to kind of think about this over the last few months or whatever since I've owned this, the more I realize, yeah, I don't think I really want to see this movie again. I just didn't really like it. And so I definitely regret picking up this 4K of Run Lola Run. So, but I don't know, maybe some of you out there really dig this one, and maybe you can tell me where I'm going wrong if you disagree with me on this one. Why do you like this movie so much if you do like it? So, but yeah, it just wasn't my cup of tea at all. So Run Lola Run. Okay, and moving right along to my number 6 here. This is a 2022 film that I was hoping it would be more fun than it actually was. And I'm talking about Uncharted, starring Marky Mark and Tom Holland, right? I was hoping this would be, just some dumb, adventurous Marky Mark fun. But it wasn't even really that. It was a totally forgettable movie. In fact, I don't even remember everything that happens in this movie. I watched it once and I was like, yeah, I'm never going to watch that again. This is one I definitely did not need to own, and I could have just streamed it or something, just to watch it once. But the other thing is, I'm not sure how I feel about Tom Holland. I don't know. He seems like he's about 12 years old to me. Maybe I'm just getting older and people in their 20s look like a lot younger to me than they actually are. But I don't know. Tom Holland, he's okay. I mean, he was all right in the Spider-Man movies. I like the Spider-Man movies. I own the Spider-Man movies. But, I don't know. I don't know if I'm the biggest Tom Holland fan, and his performance in this didn't really do much for me. Nor did Marky Mark's, I try to keep my expectations realistic whereas Marky Mark is concerned, right? But there are a lot of Marky Mark movies that I get a kick out of and have fun with, but this one wasn't really one of them. I don't know. Your own mileage may vary. Maybe it's enough to entertain you or something. And, I don't know. I don't even feel like this was that entertaining, really, to me. It really was a pretty forgettable movie. So I'll just leave it at that. And let me know what you think of this one. If you guys have this one or if you've seen this one, do you guys feel the same way? I'd love to hear from you on this. So, yeah, Uncharted. By the way, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, do me a favor and please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you do, don't forget to activate that notification bell as well so you can be alerted when I'm posting videos that you might be interested in. Also, don't forget to like the video as well. I know it seems like a really small thing, but it does help with the algorithm and the channel's visibility on YouTube. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. All right, and then I've got another Marky Mark movie here that is on this list for a different reason. Not because I thought it was a bad movie, but just because I probably won't ever watch it again. So from 2016, Patriots Day. This is a movie based on a true story, right? The manhunt for the Boston Marathon bombers. And, Yeah, it was fairly decent film. I don't have any complaints about this film. I just don't know that I really have any interest in watching it again. But you know, I didn't think it was bad when I watched it. I thought it was, you know, fairly entertaining for what it was. So yeah, I can't really say a whole lot bad about it. I just don't think I'm ever going to watch it again. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Patriots Day. And then moving right along to my number 8 here, we've got a movie I talked about not that long ago, actually in a collection update, I think a couple months ago, Revolver. I might have even said at the time that this might actually appear in a future Blind by Regrets video, and here we are. But yeah, Jason Statham, Ray Liotta, I mean, with those two in it, I thought I might actually like this one, and I picked this up because I've been trying to bulk up on my Jason Statham collection, and because I'm a big Ray Liotta fan. But I just didn't care for this one, you know, and I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It's the reason I didn't like it. I just didn't like the style. I didn't like the vibe of this film. There was something about it that just didn't resonate with me. And it's not because I think it's a bad film. It just was just didn't really do much for me, you know, and maybe, I don't know. I don't think I've seen a whole lot of Guy Ritchie films, and this is a Guy Ritchie film. And so maybe Guy Ritchie's style is just not my cup of tea. That may be the case. I don't know if I've seen any other Guy Ritchie films. So yeah, I just didn't really care for this one. And if I had to do it over again, I would not be adding this to my collection. This is one Jason Statham movie I think I could have done without. Okay, and next up, from 1998, we've got a movie here that it kind of pains me to say that this is a Blind by Regret, but I had to get honest with myself here, and I'm talking about Ray Liotta in Turbulence. This is another one I bought last year, and I had actually really high hopes for this one. I know I had seen this movie once when it, you know, back in the late 90s when it first came out, but I didn't remember anything about it, like at all. You know, I must have been like really drunk or something back then when I originally watched it back in the 90s, as was the case for me back in the 90s. I used to be quite the partier back then, so a lot of the 90s was kind of a fog for me until I cut that shit out of my life. But anyway, I'm getting off topic here, but that was probably what happened with Turbulence, because I didn't remember anything about this movie, but I was excited for it because I love Ray Liotta, right? And so I pre-ordered it, you know, as soon as the pre-order went live, or as soon as I noticed it going live, I pre-ordered it, and I was really excited about it. And then I got it, and I was totally disappointed that it turned out to not be what I hoped it would be. And I had totally forgotten about the nature of Ray Liotta's character in this movie. I didn't know whether he was a good guy, bad guy, or whatnot. And so I didn't really like the role, right? I didn't like the role Ray Liotta was playing in this particular film. I just didn't like that character. So, I mean, it wasn't a total loss. I mean, it's, you know, it might be worth watching, but it's not the kind of film that I really felt like I needed to add to my collection. You know, and I don't know if I'll ever return to this one. I'm thinking I probably won't, but who knows? You know, maybe in 10 years or something, I'll feel differently and I'll come back and revisit it. We'll see. But as of right now, this is definitely a Blind by Regret for me. So, Turbulence. All right, and for my number 10, this is the other title that kind of prompted this video. This is one of the titles I was thinking of when I thought about making a sequel to my original Blind by Regrets video. And this one really pains me to say, because I love the packaging and I love Vinegar Syndrome. I really do. But this one, I don't know if I'd get this one again. You know, Daryl from 1985. And the movie's not bad. I didn't think it was a bad movie. I just don't know if it's the kind of movie I ever really want to see again. I had never seen this growing up in the 80s. I remember the movie. I remember when it came out, but I had never watched it back then. So this was a blind buy for me. Now, fortunately, I picked this up on one of their big sales, so I didn't have to pay full price for this. So there is that. And I love the VSU boxes. You know, these VSU boxes are super cool. You know, you get the rigid boxes, you get the cool slipcover there, and I may as well show it off while I got it for those of you who are interested in this film. Again, I don't think it's a bad movie. It's just not the kind of film that I really needed to have in my collection. right? But I was curious about the Vinegar Syndrome restoration, so that's why I got it. A lot of times that's the case. It's the packaging and the great restorative work that Vinegar Syndrome does that sucks me into these releases, even if I'm not necessarily all that crazy about the movie or don't know if it's a movie that I will like or not. Anyway, so you do get a cool little slip cover there. Vinegar Syndrome does put out some of the best packaging out there, at least as far as U.S. companies go. I always love their slip covers. You always get some spot gloss, like on the letters. There's spot gloss and embossing and that kind of thing. There's the back of it there. You get that, and of course the VSU chunky box, right? Which there's a little ribbon in there, and you get a cool. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, cool little book there. It's pretty cool, and I'm not going to get into the whole thing here, but I do love their VSU boxes, and that's part of why it pains me to say this so much, because I don't really want to part with a VSU box. Well, I don't have to part with it. I own it now, so it'll probably just stay, but I don't think I would have bought this. This is not a movie I needed to have in my collection, and I mean, it's cool that I have the cool collectible packaging, but I got other VSU boxes too, so it's not something I had to have, right? Now, I don't buy every VSU box, which for those who don't know what I'm talking about, that stands for Vinegar Syndrome Ultra. For those of you who are new to collecting, that is their kind of their hard, rigid, chunky box line. Yeah, and they all come like this. Each movie that they have, I think they have what, like 12 of them, maybe 11 or 12 of movies that they've done in this kind of box set form. Most of them I picked up, but not all of them, right? I didn't pick up Six String Samurai. I was never going to get Six String Samurai, no matter how cheap it went on sale. I knew that was one I didn't need. And this one, I have to admit, I felt a little internal pressure to get it because it was a cool VSU box and because of the great restorations that Vinegar Syndrome does. But in this case, I really didn't need this one in my collection. So yeah, for my number 10, Daryl. All right, so that covers my 10 main blind buy regrets that I wanted to cover today. But as always, I do have some honorable mentions that I want to go over real quick here, just going to breeze through them. And in this case, today's honorable mentions, I'm not even sure that I feel total regret on these yet. And that's why they're in the honorable mentions section. These I'm kind of still on the fence on. Well, mostly. I'm mostly kind of on the fence on. I'm not sure if I regret adding these to my collection or not, but I'm starting to kind of feel a little bit of that regret. So I thought I'd go ahead and mention them. Well, this one is probably more solidly in the regret column, and that is Logan Lucky. I don't know. I bought this because I was looking for other heist films that I hadn't seen, and I had heard this one was pretty decent. Another one of these movies that was completely forgettable. I didn't really get into this one at all. It didn't do much for me at all. So yeah, if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't be picking up Logan Lucky. But I don't know. Maybe I need to give it another watch. Have you guys seen this? Those of you who are into heist films? I got this, a couple years ago, I guess. So I don't know. It seemed pretty forgettable to me. I don't even remember exactly how it ended. So I don't know. I probably would not have picked this one up if I had to do it over again. And another honorable mention here, also in the heist flick genre or subgenre. This one I am kind of on the fence on. I'm not sure what I think of this movie. I may return to it someday, but we'll see. Also came out the same year as Logan Lucky, 2017. I'm talking about Baby Driver. I believe this actually even has a 4K release as well, for those of you who are fans of this film. I know there are some fans of this film out there. I'm not sure what I thought about it. I'm on the fence with this one, genuinely on the fence. The first time I watched it, it didn't really do a whole lot for me. It did have some action in it and whatnot, but I don't know. There were some things about it that were kind of okay, that I kind of liked, but for the most part, it just really didn't do that much for me relative to, other heist films that I really like. So, yeah, I'll probably watch this one again someday, but I don't know if this is something I necessarily needed to have in my collection. I was trying to bulk up on my heist film collection, and so that's why I bought it. But it was just okay as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, Baby Driver, Another honorable mention here is a 2004 film, a Paul Walker film. And I bought this one because I was all pumped up on Fast and Furious movies. You know, I've watched those movies a bunch of times. I think they're a lot of fun. And I wanted some other Paul Walker action movies. So I picked up Brick Mansions. And I think this was probably a pretty cheap Blu-ray. I don't imagine it cost very much because this seems like it's kind of a direct-to-video kind of deal here, right? Again, a fairly forgettable movie. This didn't really do a whole lot for me. I was kind of hoping I'd dig it a little more than I did. But who knows? I'm on the fence here. You know, I may come back to this one and watch it someday and get more entertainment value out of it than I did the first time. So we'll see. Who knows? But yeah, as of right now, it's kind of like, I probably didn't need to add this one to my collection. Because it was a pretty forgettable movie. So yeah, Brick Mansions. And then finally, this one I am totally torn over. All right, we're going back to Vinegar Syndrome here, and we're going back to VSU boxes. And I can't believe I'm actually saying this because I got this at the time thinking, you know, I gotta have some 80s nostalgia, and it's a VSU box, and it's Vinegar Syndrome with their kick-ass restorations, so I should probably own Cloak and Dagger from 1984, right? And, you know, I watched it once, and it was fun revisiting it. I had seen this film once before. I think only once before. I mean, I remember it playing on cable TV when I was a kid. Well, I guess by that time I was like 13 or 14. But I remember it playing on cable TV, in my mid-teens or whatever. And I watched it, I think, once. I don't think I watched it more than once. And I didn't really remember it all that well. Again, this was kind of like the same situation with Daryl, where I remembered the movie from the 80s, and in this case had even seen the movie before, and mainly picked this up for the 80s nostalgia factor. And now I'm like, you know what? Am I ever going to watch this again? I might. But if I do, it's probably only going to be like maybe once in my life that I actually watch this movie again. So I don't know. It's a great release. And for those who haven't seen the Cloak and Dagger VSU box again, I'll go ahead and show it real quick here because some of you might really like this movie. And if you do, more power to you. That's great. You get a cool little slipcover here that's actually got a fake price tag, like as part of the slipcover design, right? To look like the old video game cartridge box. Then you also get, of course, the chunky box, the actual VSU box, and a little book to go with it as well. There's a little book, usually about a 40-page book, I think, 40 to 60-page books. I think they're usually about 40-page books that they include in these VSU boxes. But very cool stuff. Oops, I forgot to put my title back in there. Put the slipcover, the actual disc back in there. All right, so anyway, Vinegar Syndrome, Cloak and Dagger. This is a really good release. It's a great restoration, and it's, of course, the packaging is amazing. But I just don't know if I need this movie in my collection. You know, I don't know if I'm ever going to watch it again or not. So not a bad movie, but just not necessarily the type of thing that, you know, I would need as someone who's curating a specific type of collection for myself, right? So, yeah, for my last honorable mention, and one I'm on the fence on as far as regretting it, Cloak and Dagger. Okay, so that about wraps it up for my my latest list of 10 more blind buy regrets. What do you think of my choices here? Do you agree with me on any of these as to, you know, movies that maybe you wouldn't want to add to your collection? Or did I touch on movies that you actually like and you're thinking, Fuzz, you're full of shit. Get out of here with that crap. I mean, that's entirely possible. You know, some people don't like it when I rip on movies that they like, you know, and that's understandable. I get it. Anyway, let me know your thoughts below. I always love hearing from you guys and chatting with you and interacting with you. So make sure you leave me some feedback down below. Also, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.